HarperCollins presents A Daughter's Secret, a Josephine Cox novel with Gillian Middleton, read by Baines.
Chapter 1 1912 Daisy Farlow was really starting to hate her job. She disliked it so much that the only thing worse, she thought, would be to have no job at all, and therefore no wage. What on earth had possessed her to choose to work at the laundry run by that harridan Mrs. Chapman, when she could have been at the mill with her best friend Betty? Yes, there wouldn't have been time to have a giggle with Betty when the work was so relentless. And Betty was often pale with exhaustion by the end of the week, and speaking very loudly, a habit born of working in a place so noisy. But at least Daisy wouldn't have been on her own, as she was at the laundry, and therefore the only person to field Bertha Chapman's ill temper and meanness. Daisy had thought that taking the laundry job would bring her more independence than working at the mill, where hundreds of people were employed, and would make of her something different, special, literally not run-of-the-mill. So she had ignored Mrs. Chapman's perpetually dissatisfied face and bad-mouthing of her customers at the outset, naively failing to realize that soon the bad temper and disparaging remarks would be aimed at Daisy herself. Now she knew better. Before starting at the laundry, Daisy had worked in a fishmonger's shop, where it had been cold and the smell of fish hung about her clothes and her hair. She had not liked the staring, sightless eyes of the dead creatures either, scaly, muscular, and slippery on the slab. She wasn't interested in fish, except battered and fried, eaten hot from a newspaper. And soon her attitude to the job had become so apparent that the fishmonger had asked her to leave. Before that, there had been an ill-suited and short-lived position as a tea lady in an office. Everyone there had seemed very old, at least 30, and they were all men, who talked among themselves and mostly ignored Daisy. Then one day one of them had slapped her bottom as she went by his desk, and she'd poured his tea over his head in retaliation. It had been Daisy who had been asked to leave. Daisy's mother had tried to think of a role for her in the tiny millinery business she owned. Louisa Farlow Hats. But with Louisa employing the ever-faithful Gertie Pullinger as her assistant, and the business being so very small, there was no role for Daisy. "It's not as if I really want to sell old-fashioned-looking hats to old ladies anyway," Daisy said, when Louisa told her how sorry she was not to have room for her. "Less of the old-fashioned, if you please," said Louisa, although mildly. She knew her market and was proud of running her own business. Daisy was proud of her mother too, that she was good at what she did, that she had soldiered on so bravely when Dad had died, although her heart was clearly broken, that she was and always had been the backbone of the family, the best mother in the world. And now Daisy worked for Mrs. Chapman, with her sharp tongue, a face on her as if she'd been drinking vinegar, and the penny-pinching conviction that clothes could be washed clean in lukewarm water, using the cheapest washing soda and the end of an ancient bar of soap. Perhaps it was time to think about working elsewhere. Still, home now, and the prospect of a cosy evening with Mum, just the two of them, chatting about their work, playing Snap, or perhaps browsing one of the popular fashion newspapers Louisa bought for millinery inspiration. Daisy's sister, Rose, was now working in Yorkshire as a cook in what sounded like a smart house. They both missed her, of course. Nevertheless, these weekday evenings, with just Daisy and Mum, were happy times. Their needs were modest, they had enough to get by, and most importantly, they had each other. Daisy let herself into the little terraced house in Shallow Street. She kicked off her boots, hung up her coat and knitted beret, and went to put the kettle on. There was the sound of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?